Let's take a closer look at the second generation Mini Countryman. I'm going to do a quick review of this, as well as a 0 to 60 run. I was going to do top speed run on the salt flats, but as you can see, they're a bit flooded right now. But I really want to get into the reliability and common issues with these cars. All right, let's get nerdy. And I think I'm going to wear my wife's sunglasses because it's kind of bright out here. For those of you who didn't know, Minis are actually German cars paying homage to their British heritage. They're even styled and tuned in the UK, but the structural, electronic, and mechanical components, that is BMW. Specifically the BMW X1 in this case. Some Minis are even made in the UK, but not the Countryman. This one was made in the Netherlands, and all of the new ones are made in Germany. Personally, I love the styling of these. I think they're one of the most interesting looking cars on the road, especially in the small SUV category. And as much as this is a BMW, it's also not. The interior is classic Mini, brought to you by BMW, with a quirky layout and overall like rounded design elements here and there. And it's interesting, there's tons of nice materials all around the cabin, mixed with some really low quality materials, like this gauge cluster here. But overall, it works really well. And as it should. I mean, this is marketed as a premium small SUV. I love the steering wheel. I love the driving position. These seats are actually really comfortable. Not really for wide people. How do I say that nicely? If you've got big bones, and I love the view out of the front of this. There's a lot of different textures and it just looks really unique. There's a good amount of storage in here, but unfortunately there's only like 2 real cup holders, and the other ones in the doors are just kind of junk. For the second generation Countryman, this came standard as a 5-seater. The first generation, I don't know if you remember this, but actually had a rail system in the middle here, so it was only a 4-seater. As for the comfort back here, there is no center armrest, and that's typically where your cup holders would be, but you have these junk ones in the doors. Other than that though, I'm actually a huge fan of the back seat. There's plenty of legroom, plenty of headroom. They're good height off the floor, so there's actually thigh support, and they actually recline. Although the center seat is not comfortable. Now let's take a look at the cargo space. Power liftgate. I mean, despite the Mini's small size, there's still a pretty good amount of cargo space back here. I think that also has something to do with how the back of it's squared off and not like a sloping roof line. So it uses this space a little bit better. And since this comes with run flat tires, there's no spare tire, so you have even more room for knickknacks and personal belongings back here. But this brings us to the most important part of the entire video. Will it sleep a not so handy car guide, the standard unit of measurement? Let's see. Pretty easy to fold these flat. Same string that reclines them, just pull that and shaboom. Get the middle seat, shaboom, and shaboom. I do this test in case anyone ever feels like car camping in the back of their Mini Countryman. I'm 6 feet tall. Let's see if I fit. Okay. All right, head is touching the seat here. Oh boy. This would be a sweet view right out the top though. All right, let's see if I can move the seat forward here. Okay, still not really. This stinks. I mean, would you really expect to be able to sleep in the back in a car brand called Mini? Maybe if you're a Mini human. All right, now let's talk about what's under the hood of the Countrymen. The base engine that came in these was the 1.5 liter 3-cylinder B38 engine that made between about 101 horsepower and 134 horsepower. Move up to the Cooper S and you get the 2-liter 4-cylinder B48 engine that makes about 190 horsepower. Then you have the plug-in hybrid, which uses the same 3-cylinder engine plus an electric motor to make about 220 horsepower. And then you can move up from there to get the John Cooper Works, which uses the same 4-cylinder B48 engine, but manages to squeeze out 228 horsepower from a bigger turbo and some other upgrades. And then for the 2020 model year, the John Cooper Works managed to squeeze out 302 horsepower from these engines, which made these things seriously quick. As for fuel economy, there's really a ton of driveline options for these, so I can't give you the exact numbers, but fuel economy is generally good in the upper 20s to low 30s on premium fuel. Okay, so how this drives is a little bit of a mixed bag for me. I love the responsiveness of the handling, and you can really just throw this thing around and it does feel like an oversized golf cart. Golf cart? Go-kart. A go-kart, which is classic Mini. I love the quick shifts and I love the low end torque from this. But the thing is, the throttle response is just not there. So if this were my car, the first thing I would do is get an aftermarket tune to see if I can fix that throttle response, because it'll just make the driving experience so much better. Another thing is that this chassis, you can really feel every single bump and imperfection in the road, which, I mean, for someone who wants a sporty feeling vehicle, that's fine. That's what you expect. But for someone who wants a small SUV in the premium category, I don't know, I feel like this is going to disappoint a lot of people. Now, this is where I wanted to test the top speed in the salt flats, but we're gonna have to do a 0 to 60 instead. Let's see how fast this is. I'm gonna keep it full auto, and all right. I feel like we got a good launch there. Overall, the second-gen Countryman's reliability has improved a lot from its predecessor, but there's still a couple issues to pay attention to. And you might even notice that some of these problems are actually the same as the BMWs that they're based on. First, let's talk about the most common issues. The motor mounts are known to fail often and early, especially the top mount here, which is actually filled with a hydraulic fluid. This mount can crack over time from heat and stress and actually leak out this hydraulic fluid. And if the motor mounts fail, you're gonna start to notice the engine vibrating more, especially from inside the cabin. Or when you shift it from reverse to drive, you'll notice a clunk. And if this happens to you, you really want to fix this as ASAP as possible. Which brings us to our next issue. There's a thin metal plate called a flex plate in the 8-speed automatic transmissions that can actually crack if these motor mounts aren't repaired. And to fix this, it requires removing the transmission, which is expensive. If your flex plate is cracked, you might notice a metallic ticking coming from the transmission area that almost sounds like engine rod knock. And if this gets bad enough, the transmission is not going to shift properly. The Aisin 8-speed automatic transmission is manufactured in Japan and actually used in a ton of other vehicles. They're known to be pretty reliable, but maintenance is key with these. I recommend changing the fluid every 60,000 miles or so, no matter what the manufacturer tells you. Some people claim it's a lifetime fluid. That's just not the case. The 7-speed dual clutch transmissions are also fairly reliable, but if you do a lot of city driving, the clutches can get worn over time with all that starting and stopping. One other potential issue is with the all-wheel drive system's transfer case. Now, these hull deck style transfer cases are actually pretty reliable, but they do have a series of clutches and a bearing inside that can go bad and wear if the transfer case fluid degrades too much. Some symptoms of transfer case issues would be when you're turning, if you feel like a binding sensation in the driveline or a vibration, that could be those clutches not engaging properly. So I do recommend periodically, depending on how you drive your Countryman, changing your transfer case fluid every 60,000 miles or so. So why not just do it at the same time as your transmission fluid service? That way you know you're good to go. Okay, so the 3 cylinders in these can be fairly reliable with the proper maintenance. They are really sensitive to oil changes, so make sure you stay on top of that, or else you just open up a can of worms with timing chain wear, PCV issues, and potentially oil consumption issues. As with pretty much all direct injection engines, these can develop carbon buildup on the intake valves as time goes on. And if that does happen in higher mileage, you might notice a rough running engine, lower fuel economy, or potentially a check engine light. Now, there is some evidence that installing aftermarket catch can with this can help with carbon buildup, but chances are if you do own a high mileage one of these, you're going to have the intake valves carbon cleaned at a shop by being walnut blasted. And just like most other BMW engines, this is likely going to suffer from oil leaking from the valve cover and the oil cooler as time goes on. And speaking of valve cover leaks, there's actually an issue with this 1.5 liter engine where the valve cover can blow out and actually cause a vacuum leak in the engine. And if that's the case, you're probably going to get a P0171 code. It's also common for the plastic bits in the cooling system to get brittle and potentially crack with age and heat. So if you notice a sweet smell coming from the front of the car or your coolant level low, just check your cooling system because it could be leaking. Now with the 2-liter B48 engine, this is going to be the slightly more reliable of the engine options, but it is still prone to some of the same issues as the 1.5-liter, with the same potential oil leak spots, the same potential for carbon buildup, and the same neediness when it comes to oil changes. And that is really the most important thing to remember here. And also, it's probably going to have the same issues with the cooling system bits degrading over time. As far as other issues go, there's a few things to note about the body of the Countryman. These are known to have occasional trim issues, especially around the headlights and at the window seals. If you happen to notice any water intrusions or wind noise on the road, definitely check around these seals around the car. Another thing that can go bad are these liftgate struts. And since these aren't regular gas struts, these are actual power liftgate struts, they can be a little bit more expensive to replace. One other thing, this is marketed as a premium vehicle, but a lot of people have concerns about the interior rattling, kind of creaking around over bumps sometimes, which can get pretty annoying. Okay, lastly, the infotainment center here is actually based on BMW's iDrive system, which is known to be a little glitchy sometimes. People online say that if you just shut off the car and turn it back on, it usually fixes those glitches. All right, so let's give you a little summary of things to look out for with the Mini Countryman. Look out for clunking when shifting between park and drive, rattling on cold starts, engine vibrations, metallic ticking coming from the transmission, a binding or grinding when cornering, oil and coolant leaks, and potential misfires. So how reliable is the second-gen Mini Countryman overall? Well, it is definitely more reliable than the older Minis. The B48 and B38 engines are a big improvement. But because of some of the Mini quality control quirks with these, I'm gonna rate it slightly lower on my list than their BMW counterparts. Alrighty, if you have had any personal experience with Mini Countrymans, please feel free to help others by leaving it in the comments. Alrighty, take care now, bye-bye then. I said already twice, but it's fine. I didn't notice. Okay.